السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. معكم المدرس الدكتور ميسم بهاء صالح من قسم اللغة الإنجليزية. محاضرة اليوم هي عن النقد الأدبي في اللغة الإنجليزية للمرحلة الرابعة. Good morning everyone. My name is Dr. Meysan Baha Saleh and I'm from the English Department, College of Arts at Mustansiriya University. Today's lecture is on the literary criticism for the fourth year. Today I'm going to give a summary or an introduction about the literary criticism schools and a historical development for these schools. To start with, we are going to talk about the beginning of these schools, starting from the 20th century, and which is actually the beginning of the modernism or the modernist period. It has been said that this period is actually based on historical and biographical research concerning searching for criticism. Now, they have thought, in fact, that criticism's function is actually to discover the historical context of a text and to ascertain how the author's lives and how his life influenced his writings. Now, such extrinsic analysis, and I mean that examining elements outside the text to uncover the text's meanings, became the norm in the literature departments of many American and British universities. Now, other forms of criticism and interpretation were often intermingled with a prominent emphasis on history and biography. For example, some critics believed we should appreciate the text for its beauty, and those called the impressionistic critics, and I mean by that how we feel and what we personally see in a work of art and what really matter. Now, others were more philosophical, arguing a naturalistic view of life that emphasizes the importance of a scientific thought and a literary analysis. And that, of course, we are talking about the naturalistic or the naturalism school. They mean that human beings are considered animals who are caught in a world that operates on definable scientific principles and who respond somewhat instinctively to their environments and internal drives. Now, still we have another school, which is the new humanists. They valued the moral qualities of art, declaring that human experiences are basically ethical. These critics, in fact, demanded that literary analysis is based on moral values exhibited in a text. And the last school in this period, which is the Romanticism, and of course it started in the 19th century, and those writers, or what we call the Romantics, they study the artist's feelings and attitudes and personal visions exhibited in their works. Known as the expressive school, they view values the individual artist's experiences as evidence in a text. Now, along with these schools, the one discussed previously, like the Impressionism, the Naturalism, the New Humanism, and also the Romantic views, we have another school that rejected all these schools, which is the New Critics or the New Criticism. Those critics, in fact, reacted against all these old schools and all forms. And they asserted that the poem itself can be objectively evaluated and not concerning the feelings, attitudes, values, and beliefs of the author or the reader, because they concern themselves primarily with an examination of the work itself. Talking about the new criticism, we have an example, for instance, like Mary Brown's poem, Early Spring Obeyed. In this poem, she has talked about the spring and how she sees spring from her point of view. So if, let's say, a new critic looks at this poem, he or she will analyze the poem and ask such questions like, for instance, what is the meaning of the title? What is the title's relationship to the rest of the poem? And where is the office located in line 1? What is the meaning of the word stippling in line 3? And are these words in the text need to be defined? And in line 4, for instance, how can the dune crawl toward or even being more fragile? What is the relationship that Brown establishes between failures and grace, and so on? So, in these questions, the new critic will look at the text itself far away from the author or the poetess. Now, upon close examination of these discussions, a distinct pattern or methodology quickly become evident. That this particular interpretive model begins with a close analysis of the poem's individual words, including both denotative and connotative meanings. Then moves to the discussion of possible allusions within the text. Now, following this discussion, the teacher or the critic search for any patterns developed through individual words, phrases or clauses, sentences, figures of speech, or allusions. The critic's sharp eye also notes at any symbols or public or private symbols, and that represent, of course, something for the writer. Now, other elements for analysis include point of view, tone, or any other poetic device that will help the reader understand the dramatic situation. Now, the poem's overall meaning or form depends almost solely on the text in front of the reader. This is how the new criticism works. No library research, no studying of the author's life or background or time, and no other extra textual information is needed, except maybe using the dictionary to know the meanings of the words. The poem itself contains all the necessary information one needs to analyze. Now, this method of analysis became the dominant school of thought and interpretive methodology during the first 2/3 of the 20th century in most high schools and colleges or universities in Britain and America. Known as the new criticism, this approach to literary interpretation and analysis provides the reader with a formula for arriving at the correct interpretation of the text, using, for the most part, only the text itself. Such a formula approach gives both the beginning student of literature and academic people a seemingly objective approach. It's definitely an objective approach, not a subjective one. Using new criticism, clearly articulated methodology, any intelligent reader, say its adherents called the new critics, can uncover a text's hitherto so-called hidden meaning. Now, the new criticism's theoretical ideas, terminology, and critical methods are more often than not disparaged by many present-day critics who themselves are introducing new ideas concerning literary theory. Despite its current unpopularity, new criticism stands as one of the most important English-based contributions to literary critical analysis. Its easily repeatable principles, teachableness, and seemingly undying popularity in the literature classroom and in some scholarly journals have enabled new criticism to enrich theoretical and practical criticism while helping generations of readers to become close readers of text. The new term, or this term, the new criticism, came into popular use to describe this approach to understanding literature with the 1941 publication of John Crowe Ransom's The New Criticism, a work that contained Ransom's personal analysis of several of his contemporary theorists and critics. Ransom himself was in fact a Southern poet, a critic, and one of the leading advocates of this evolving movement. While teaching at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee in the 1920s, Ransom alone, with other several professors and students, formed the Fugitives. Fugitives, a group of scholars and critics who believed and practiced similar interpretive approaches to a text. Now, other sympathetic groups, such as the Southern Agrarians, also in the same university, the Nashville, or the same city, the Nashville, Tennessee, soon formed a group for literary criticism. Now, in the new criticism, Ransom articulates the principles of these various groups and calls for an ontological critic. And I mean by that, one who will recognize that a poem, for instance, is concrete entity, as in Leonardo da Vinci's The Mona Lisa, or the Handel's Messiah, or any chemical element such as iron or gold. Like these concrete objects, a poem can be analyzed to discover its true or correct meaning, independent of its author's intention or emotional state, values, or beliefs of either of the author or the reader. Now, because this claim rests at the center of the movement's critical ideas, it is not surprising that the title of Ransom's book quickly became the official name of this school. Now, some called it modernism, some formalism, aesthetic criticism, textual criticism, or ontological criticism throughout its long and successful history. New criticism, in fact, like all schools of criticism, does not represent a coherent body of critical theory and methodology espoused by its followers. At best, new criticism and its adherents, the new critics I mean, are an eclectic group, each challenging, borrowing, and changing terminology, theory, and practices from one another, while asserting common core of basic ideas. Now, their ultimate unity stems from their opposition to the prevailing methods of literary analysis found in academia in the first part of the 20th century. That was our lecture for today, which was only an introduction for the schools of literary criticism, an introduction for the first school, which was the new classicism or the new criticism. I hope that you find it useful. Thank you very much, and hope to see you in other lectures. Thank you.